first episode of Garden State Cyber. My name is Ken Fishkin, and I'm with Jose Lagdameo as my co host.
Hi everyone, Jose Lagdameo. I'm a co-host for this new videocast that I'm having with Ken Fishkin. And tonight we have a great topic around Microsoft Teams. And tonight our guest speaker will talk about this great topic, this platform, and what the pitfalls of configuring it. Arthur?
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jose. I'm Arthur Hedge, president and co-founder of Castle Ventures Corporation. We're a data security consulting company. And we're going to start off our conversation with kind of a case study of one of our clients. We have a client with over 5,000 users who was an early adopter of Microsoft Teams. And from the perspective of the user community and the Microsoft marketing folks, Teams has been a huge success for this organization, especially since the start of the pandemic. People work on Teams meetings. They send info via chat, they share files, screen share, and it really is a workplace. And it's also become the default data repository for projects and business units. Even the payroll department started storing their data in Teams, as we would come to find out. And Teams was kind of cruising along at this organization under the radar, but then at the corporate level, they decided they wanted to migrate all their on-premise data up to the cloud and SharePoint Online and OneDrive. So we were brought in to help with that migration and develop a data governance program to manage their cloud infrastructure. And the first thing that we did when we got there was did an assessment of their existing Teams infrastructure. And that was an eye-opener to everyone.
Teams was new back then, right? So people didn't
Yes.
understand that about security. They just were so happy that they were able to share documents between each other, right?
Yeah, and I don't think anyone had thought about it at all, what the risks were, how this would work. There were no best practices available, or they weren't relevant from a large corporate security perspective on how to manage this. So, we found lots of problems. They shared information across the departments, even when they shouldn't be. They shared data with outside the organization, files, folders, and in two kind of unique situations, this company partners with some of their competitors. Like many other businesses, they have competitors and that are simultaneously partners. So these people were sharing information via Teams with their competitors on projects that they were working cooperatively on. What's
But
interesting
this
is
the same as everyone else, right, Arthur? Isn't that the same as everyone else?
It was then. Well, I think people have wised up a little bit. When Teams was first deployed, the default was you could share data with anyone in the world that had a Microsoft 365 account. That has changed. It's no longer the default, but that was the default then.
Why were they sharing data with their competitors? Explain that a little bit.
Well, they also partner, so they'll have a joint venture on something, for one particular business unit, but they are doing other, but they're competing with other parts of their business. And so they were sharing data legitimately between two different groups of the competitors. But what happened was two employees left to go work for competitors, and because they could send this data across Teams, they sent all their data from my client to their new employer before they left. And nobody knew. I mean, it wasn't stopped because it was allowed from a technology perspective. It wasn't until after the fact that we could find the links that it had happened.
And Teams makes it so easy to do that. It's
Yes.
ridiculous.
But unfortunately, though, I know we're talking about Teams, but this is a broader issue, right? Isn't it more talking about additional controls covering every technology that a company could have? It's not specific to Teams, but I understand, Teams is really exposed especially when you take the default options, right, Arthur? I mean, you can't take it outside it just as is. You have to put some thought into it, some analysis, and an idea on what data is going to be in there that could be exposed if not configured properly.
Yep, and what's scary about a lot of these cloud solutions and teams especially, you are empowering the users, right? That's one of the beauties of this solution, is that you're empowering the user community. But that also means that you're giving the power for the business person, who may or may not understand security and the risks that they're taking, the ability to cause lots of havoc within your organization. Like at this particular client, the data owner's allowed to make sharing decisions. So the payroll department, they right clicked on the payroll folder where they get all their work documents, and they shared it with the entire organization. So in Teams, you can go search for something, and if you search for payroll, you'd find all of that week's payroll information, how much people were getting paid, what their 401k contributions were, and you'd see that all throughout the organization. So if somebody, impersonated a user, which that's the primary way people get hacked today, is that someone will take over somebody's account and they've got Teams running and it's unmanaged. You can go search and find lots of interesting information. So you've actually made the hacker's life easier by deploying some of these cloud solutions once they get inside your organization.
I mean, I know at my own company, we are terrified about having implementing Teams other than just like for that Zoom experience. But saving files to it via SharePoint, we are not there yet at all.
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt this great conversation, but have you found that companies tend to navigate towards ease of use versus security controls? Meaning
Yep. I think most organizations take the approach that if a business person wants to do something and it's going to generate revenue for the business, they're going to do it. And security people have to be very wary of saying no to those people, right? They have to work cooperatively with the business people to make sure that those tools are deployed properly. But you can't say no, with few exceptions. Highly regulated industries, people with extremely sensitive financial data have the ability to slow things down. But man, the cloud is here and it's growing. And as a security professional, you really have to be thoughtful about how you approach, dealing with the solution as well as your organization.
And I agree with you that you cannot say no, because you will be out of a job very fast. Nobody will want to hire you. That's for sure. But the idea that I've been working with, at least at my firm, is that I am now embedded in the projects. I know, from the beginning, I may not be intertwined through the whole thing, but at least I'm involved and I know what's going on, and I can make sure that it doesn't go off the rails.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think one of my key recommendations is that you should have written policies for the use of each of these cloud solutions, right? Even if you can't stop somebody from sharing data today, but your firm doesn't want it to happen, that should be your policy. You should have acceptable use policies for these cloud solutions that say what you can and cannot do with these tools, because otherwise you expose yourself to far too much risk to the organization.
I mean, I know that you can have policies within Teams to lock people down so they can't do it on their own, because a lot of people won't read those acceptable use policies, as we know.
Agreed.
So
that brings up another point, another challenge to these tools. This is true with Microsoft Teams. I mean, there are thousands of configuration options for Microsoft Teams, and that's true with
Microsoft,
Salesforce or Workday or any of these other cloud solutions that are out there. You need to understand what those are, and luckily for the security professionals, there are a class of tools, SSPM tools that are being developed, lots of startups in that space, like SaaS Security Posture Management, that are analyzing your cloud configurations and giving you some advice on what you can and cannot do, and track all that stuff. Because no one person's going to be able to do this, and you can't be an expert in all the tools that your organization's going to deploy. I mean, security people are in a tough spot today.
So, but what about companies that don't have a lot of budget, right? I mean, if they can't hire someone like you, Arthur, how can they do this? How can they be secure, or at least get to a path where they can um, implement some semblance of control around this platform?
Yep, I think it's, you can reach out to the cloud vendors and get some best practices guides from there to try to follow those. I mean, in the bigger, more complex solutions like Teams, that's a full-time job. So, you're kind of stuck in some of these situations. There is the Cloud Security Alliance that people can go to for guidance, but it's very tough. And you need to share with other people in the cybersecurity space, and you need to try to get some expertise brought in, even if you can't hire them, full time, to get some consulting advice on what you can and cannot do.
I
But
mean,
it's a challenge.
does Microsoft provide their own recommendation? I would assume, right? They give you how to configure it properly, recommendations, how to guides, all that kind of stuff, right? Secure,
I mean, there's some, but look, the default of most of the cloud vendors is to make solutions as widely available and as collaborative as possible, which is contrary to security controls, right?
And
My client that deployed Teams, they had Microsoft involved. Microsoft didn't warn them that, geez, you shouldn't be sharing all this information. They wanted them to be doing this, right? They
that's right.
wanted to send that link to Jose, because Jose then has to get a Microsoft.com account or a Microsoft Online account so that he can go read the file. So you've got this conflict of interest at some level, right? I don't think it's a conscious. They're not consciously trying to undermine security, but I think subconsciously these tools want people to collaborate and share information, right? That's what they're doing.
Right.
They want to share information. That's not necessarily what the CEO of your organization wants to do. They don't want to share that information with everyone.
Well, that's one thing that I think that kind of showed up with the COVID era, right? More collaboration, more online work being done, and teams facilitate this process. And I think that it makes sense. Like you said earlier, security does not say no. We configure these platforms to allow businesses to function, but it doesn't mean it can't be secured, and it should be secured when we configure them, right,
Yes.
Ken?
But you need to have someone who has expert knowledge of the product, because what I've seen also, not only are there so many bells and whistles with these tools, especially from Microsoft, is that a lot of them are undocumented. They don't really tell you exactly what those functions do or what the security risks are for having them enabled or disabled. And you really have to play with it to feel comfortable with it. I know firsthand that we would ask specialists. I'd be like, I've Googled this to my heart's content and I can't find anything about X. And they'll be like, oh yeah, this does this and this, and Microsoft does an okay job, but it is definitely not, a manual that has everything explained to you. There's no such thing as a manual on Teams.
No, no, and it changes, right? I mean, it changes every week. If you're an administrator of Microsoft 365 environment, and we've been a long time Teams user at Castle Ventures. We've been using the product for 4 or 5 years at least. Luckily, my system admin is very security conscious, so we didn't make any of these, or we didn't make nearly the mistakes that most organizations do. We were very kind of suspicious right from the get-go. But I think you need to be able to, even if you don't know what you're doing, you need to figure out a way that you can audit user activity so that when something goes wrong, you're going to be able to find that out, whether that's Microsoft Sentinel or some other solution to audit user activity in Teams. And two, you need to test, right? The business person says, hey, we're deploying this cloud solution. And you say, great, we're here to work with you on how to do that safely. But when they deploy it, you want to test all the different scenarios that are out there. And, I have a customer, they're, highly regulated financial services company. we've spent 2.5 years testing all the different options in Teams before they rolled it out. They've been doing it department by department with the lowest risk department first until, now 2.5 years later, they're fully utilizing the tool. But we tested sending GIFs to outsiders. What would happen with that? And, chats and everything that you could think of within Teams we tested. But, it's already changed since we, finished all that. So, it's a tough challenge for the security people.
It's a very tough challenge. It's a big platform. I love using Teams. It's a great product. But like our talk here today, it's just we have to secure it. But any last words, Arthur, around Microsoft Teams or security in general?
Sure. I think what I think you need to be able to do is understand that this is a very fluid environment. So you as a security professional need to do a couple of things. One, you need to let your business people know that there is risk involved in deploying these tools so that they at least know that this is happening. And two, you need to figure out a way that you can keep up with what's going on. And that can be done by testing the environments that you've deployed within your organization.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur.
Anything you want to talk about before we go?
I think we can end.
It's been a great conversation, but
Yeah.
our time is limited, and as much as we want to talk more.
Just understand your company's risk tolerances. That's all I can say. Is reiterate what Arthur was saying, and then you should be okay.
Yep.
And don't say no. That's for sure.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, we can never say no. In as much as get skilled professionals to help you. Right. You're not in this alone. You have resources out there, organizations. A lot of guidance to help you configure this platform. But at the end of the day, if you don't have those, you can't get an idea from how to do it. Get professional help. It's really it all comes down to.
Agreed.
But what's important is you secure your platforms, regardless of what it is, to make sure that everything's done securely and you're not exposed.
Agreed.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Jose.
Yes, this has been a great first episode, and looking forward to our second one coming up soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. I hope you found this useful. Thank you.